Hey everybody and welcome to the channel. I know I've promised I had some videos coming out soon that you might be waiting on, and they're still on their way, so be patient. But today I want to talk about some articles that are floating around about Miata alternatives, and some of them are kind of out there and some of them are just completely off the deep end. So I thought it might be nice to have a video about this and have a discussion about this. Please feel free to add your ideas for Miata alternatives to the comments below. But we're going to go through this list, and I'm going to start with an article that was on Road and Track. So basically what Road and Track said is that, yeah, Mazda's got a great car, but there are plenty of alternatives, but I'm not so sure their list of alternatives is so great. So let me preface this with the idea that they're talking about the 2023 Miata. And honestly, I don't think there's a single car on this list that I would take over a 2023 Miata, and I'll explain why. But let's get started with number one. The first car on the list is the Toyota GR86, which, yeah, I'll say this is a competitor to the Miata. It's got about 47 more horsepower, but it's also about 500 pounds heavier than the Miata as well, so that kind of makes them even. And the price is similar to the Miata as well. And it does come with a manual transmission on the base model, which the Miata does too. Personally, I prefer the convertible top, so I'll take the Miata. I'm not going to ding this one here, though. I think this is a valid competitor, so we're going to say this is okay. Yeah, all right. This is a good example of an alternative. So let's go to number two. Second car on the list is the Subaru BRZ, which is almost exactly the same car as the GR86. Same drivetrain, same weight, same horsepower. The trim's a little different. The body panels are a little different, but underneath it, it's pretty much the same platform. The BRZ is slightly cheaper than the GR86, but the thing that cracks me up about the article is what they say about it here. It has a real roof, rear seats, and a sizable trunk. Real roof? Okay, it's got a hardtop. As far as I'm concerned, the Miata's got a real roof too. It's just a convertible roof and not a hardtop. But we'll let that one slide. But rear seats, if I had a BRZ, the first thing I would do is a rear seat delete kit on that thing, because those seats are completely unusable and wasted space, and I'd rather have a place to store things. And as far as the sizable trunk, it's about 1.7 cubic feet bigger than a Miata, which, okay, it's bigger, but I'm not sure if I would say sizable. Anyway, these are both the same car, and I'd say, yeah, they're alternatives to a Miata. But let's move on to the next one, because this one is just absolutely ridiculous. The next car on the list is the 2023 Hyundai Elantra N, which, how they ever thought this is a Miata alternative, I have no idea. I've driven an Elantra N. I can't see how anybody who would want something that's similar to a Miata would think, oh yeah, this is it. Yes, we know, the Hyundai Elantra N is a front-wheel drive sedan and not a rear-drive convertible. But in terms of value for money and pure fun factor, the Hyundai is right up there with the Mazda MX-5. Just be sure not to look directly at it. Yeah, don't look at the Hyundai directly, and definitely don't drive it after you've driven a Miata, because you're going to be so disappointed. You're going to wonder what was wrong with the person who wrote this. Anyway, that's enough about this nonsense. Let's move on. Next car. No. A 2024 Camaro. Okay, first of all, not a car that's even available yet. So let me get this straight. So you're saying that somebody who's going to cross-shop a Miata is going to decide, no, I don't want a Miata. I want a Camaro. And specifically, I want the Camaro with the 4-cylinder turbo. What? This is almost as crazy as the Hyundai. Now their logic here is that the Camaro has about 100 more horsepower and twice as many seats. And again, have you ever sat in the back seat of a Camaro? Unless you're a child, it's not a usable seat. I'm sorry. And yes, it does have 100 more horsepower. But guess what else it has? Almost 1,600 more pounds of weight. Now, don't get me wrong here, because I've owned 5 F-bodies, and I love them. But compared to a Miata, this car is big and heavy, has terrible visibility. Right now, it's circling the drain. Its last year is going to be next year, and then they're canceling it. If you're going to buy a Camaro, at least get a V8. I'm sorry. Next car. Really? Oh yeah, okay. Because we have a four-cylinder EcoBoost Mustang. We're going to put that on the list too. I guess because they don't make a four-cylinder Challenger, that's why it didn't appear on here. But nothing about the Mustang or Camaro, but I see these cars in a completely different class than the Miata, and I don't see them as alternatives. They're bigger, they're heavier, they're mainly geared towards horsepower, and these are the lowest horsepower versions of that car. And personally, if I was going to buy either one of them, I wouldn't buy either one of them without a V8. That's just me. Anyway, let's keep moving. And next on the list, at almost twice the price of a Miata, is the BMW Z4. Okay, I have to put this quote up on the screen so you can see it. So it says, "Want a little luxury in your rear-wheel drive drop-top experience? The BMW Z4 is the car for you. No, it's probably not as fun to drive as the Miata, but it's got the same two-seat Roadster layout, way more speed, and way more creature comforts. As a one-car solution, you could do a whole lot worse. Best of all, used examples of the current gen model are starting to creep into the Miata's price range." I'm going to take issue with this one because this car is like twice the price of a Miata. And I don't consider that an alternative. If I can buy two Miatas for the price of this one car and it's not as fun as the Miata, I'd rather have two Miatas. Just give me two Miatas and keep your BMW. And then they start talking about used BMW Z4s, which I'm going to put in the bad idea category here because nothing, in my opinion, is worse than a European car without a warranty. And I'm sure there are people out there who are going to disagree with me. I don't care. I will never buy a European car without a warranty. I think that's a really smart thing to do because these cars are over-engineered, they break a lot, and they're extremely expensive to maintain compared to a Miata. I would rather have two Miatas than one of these. And while this isn't the most ridiculous car on the list, let's move on to the next one. The next car on the list is the Toyota Supra 2.0. My personal opinion, this goes back to the Camaro Mustang thing. If I'm going to buy a car like this, I'm not going to buy the cheapest, lowest horsepower version of it. If I want a car like this, I want the 3.0. I mean, yeah, this is more horsepower than a Miata, but it's also $15,000 more expensive. But in their comments, they say a used four-cylinder is about as expensive as a new Miata. You got enough apples and oranges coming out here to start a fruit stand. And to me, throwing used cars into the mix with this just says, we're super desperate to come up with alternatives here, so we're just going to stretch as far as we can, because, you know, this car is cheaper than a new one. But you know what? A used Miata is cheaper too, so if you're trying to save money, just buy a used Miata. For our next car, though, we got to turn the crazy up a notch. So here it comes. The 2024 718 Boxster. Again, another car that's not available yet. And the thing here is they have the price listed at $72,050. And that's like the base price of a Porsche. Just out of curiosity, I thought I'd go out on the internet and see if I could find one for sale for that price. And you know what? I could only find one for sale within a 200-mile radius of my house, and it was $103,000. I don't really consider that a competitor. Now, I can't say that nobody's going to cross-shop the Boxster and the Miata because I happen to know somebody who couldn't decide between the two of them, so he bought both. But he's an anomaly, and most people who are looking for a car like a Miata aren't looking to spend $100,000 or even $72,000 for that matter. And at the end of it, they say go used, you'll find better options. But you're going back into that European car without a warranty thing. And I'm sorry, that's just crazy. I'm not going to agree that that's an alternative to a Miata. It's a completely different car. Moving on. And the next car on the list is the new Nissan Z, which, yeah, okay, I'll give you this one because, yeah, it's a little more reasonable than the last couple. I saw they have it listed at a little over $42,000, and I know these things are kind of a hot commodity now. So I went out and looked to see what I could find one for near me. And the cheapest one I could find anywhere near me was $55,000. So we're starting to get into that territory where, yeah, okay, you got to spend a lot more money to have an alternative to a Miata. The thing about these ones, you can't say go look for a used one because there are no used ones. This is the first year they came out with them. I'll give you this one, but we're going to move on because it gets really stupid from here. So I guess we're back to the European cars again with the Audi TT. And I love this quote, so I gotta put this up on the screen. The Audi TT might not be as light and tossable as the Miata, but it's still a cool, stylish alternative. New versions are pretty expensive, but thanks to the magic of depreciation, you can pick up a current gen TT for about the price of a new Miata, or less if you're willing to buy a high mileage example. What? So okay everybody, let's do the magic of depreciation on our Audi here. Alakazam, abracadabra, and poof! I'm sorry, what they're saying here is just absolute madness. If you're going to recommend that somebody buy a high mileage used Audi TT instead of a Miata with a warranty, you're crazy. Unless your name is Tyler Hoover or you're a certified Audi mechanic, buying a used high mileage TT is a crazy idea, especially compared to a brand new Miata with a warranty. And I'm sorry, there is no way in hell I would ever own a high mileage used Audi TT. Nope, not gonna happen. I'll take 2 or 3 or 5 Miatas before I go that route. I mean, for the price of maintaining a high mileage Audi, I could probably just buy a second Miata. So, no, hard pass. But if you think that one was crazy, we're going to get even more stupid now. Oh my God, really? I can't believe this. The Ariel Atom. Oh my God, the Ariel Atom. The Ariel Atom, seriously. Did they just put a bunch of pictures on a dartboard and start throwing darts at it and say, oh yeah, this is the car? The Ariel Atom. Okay, how much is this like a Miata? Well, it's small, it's light, it handles amazingly. It's basically a tube frame with a turbocharged 4-cylinder on it. And yeah, it's super fast. It handles great. If you ever saw that episode of Top Gear where Jeremy Clarkson was driving one of these and it was pulling his face back as he was driving it, yeah, this thing's crazy. But really, maybe in the craziest stretch, this is an alternative to a Miata, but you guys were talking about seats and trunks and stuff like that, and this car has none of those things. It doesn't even have a roof. You were talking about how the BRZ had a real roof. This car doesn't even have a roof. This is pretty much just a race car that's designed for the track. You're not going to be able to drive this thing daily like you could a Miata. I'm sorry. And of course, rounding out the list is the 2023 Morgan Super 3. Again, another car that you can't go out and buy. Now, it's supposed to be super fun, but it looks like half a car. It's only got 3 wheels. It's got 118 horsepower, and it weighs about 1,400 pounds. So I'm sure it's really fun. Maybe if you're only thinking of the Miata as a car that you go to the track with, but I don't know about anybody else, but for me, my Miata is a daily driver. I drive it everywhere. I take it to the grocery store. I take it to work. I go everywhere. Driving a car like this, especially here in Seattle where it rains all the time, yeah, hard pass. Not going to happen. But as out there as those options are, I found another one that is so far beyond how crazy those ones were that it just blows my mind. So a couple weeks ago, a site called Motor Biscuit put out an article that's called "One Unlikely Alternative to the Mazda Miata Isn't a Sports Car or a Sedan." Okay. And you start reading this article, and what do you think they're going to recommend as an alternative to the Miata? Are you ready for this? Drum roll. The Jeep Wrangler. What? That has to be the craziest alternative I can possibly imagine. And they even go as far as to say, I'm going to put this up on the screen so you can see that I'm not making this up. Also, the Wrangler has an off-road advantage compared to the Miata, which gives it an advantage when the two models are pitted against each other. Okay, so that's how we're going to do it. Bring your Jeep to the racetrack and we'll see how well it can keep up with a Miata. And they even say here, even though the Mazda Miata and the Jeep Wrangler are of different types of vehicles, they have several features in common. Firstly, both models are convertibles since the Wrangler's roof is removable, as are its doors. Besides having unique designs, the Miata and the Wrangler are fairly affordable and offer a 3-year warranty. The starting MSRP for a MX-5 Miata is $28,050, while on the other hand, a Jeep Wrangler has a starting MSRP of $34,865. So I have to say, this is the absolute stupidest comparison I've ever seen. It must have been a slow day and they were just trying to come up with content, and they come up with whatever ridiculous thing they can think of to post. I'm sorry, this is just idiotic. And since I would never make a video like this without making my own version of the same list, and I can use used cars, I don't have to pay attention to how much they cost, I'm going to come up with a better list of cars as alternatives to Miatas, and I'm going to throw in a few cars that should have been on the previous list based on the logic they used to come up with the examples that were on that list. So here's my list. Since we started off the previous list with the Toyota GR6 and the Subaru BRZ, what better way to start off this list with an alternative to a Miata? The Fiat. So yes, I'm going to start off with the Fiat 124 Spider. And interestingly, this car has less in common with the Miata than the BRZ has with the GR86. The big difference here is that the Fiat has completely different body panels and it has a completely different motor. It has a 1.3 liter turbo motor instead of the Skyactiv 2.0 that the Miata gets. And one of the things that I do have to say about this Fiat is that the Abarth version has the absolute best sounding exhaust I've ever heard on a stock car in that price range. It's lovely. I've driven one and they're fun too, just like a Miata, so I definitely think that it's a good alternative to one. And next on my list is the Honda S2000, because this is the classic battle, the S2000 versus the Miata. Which one's better? It always goes back and forth. There's never really a clear answer to this one. Personally, and I know some people are going to get offended by this, there's 4 generations of Miatas and 1 of the S2000, and Honda stopped making it, and they're a way bigger company than Mazda is. And in the previous list, when they started throwing in turbo 4-cylinder sedans as an option to a Miata, I think they could have made better choices. Like, for example, the Honda Civic Type R. I mean, it was really obvious in that other list that they didn't really care if we're talking the same price range as a Miata, so the Type R is a much better choice than an Elantra N. I'm sorry. It's a way better car, and it's a way better value for the money. And while we're talking about cars like that, let's throw in the GR Corolla. I mean, you know how I feel about the Corolla, but I'm going to throw it in here as an alternative, and it's a much better choice than some of the other garbage that was in that previous list. And for the next car, if you got to throw a Hyundai in this list, let's make it the Veloster N instead of the Elantra N. It's a lot better looking car. It's a lot more sporty. It's got the same horsepower and torque as the Elantra, and I think it's a better choice as a Miata alternative, even though I don't really think it's an alternative to a Miata. But if you're looking for that kind of car, I'd say it's a much better choice than the Elantra. For my next car, I chose the Alfa Romeo 4C, because if you're going to completely ignore the price range and you're going to make used cars an option, it definitely has more of the ethos of a Miata. It's small, it's light, it's nimble, and it's pretty quick too. So it definitely gets my vote for this list. And now's the point where I'm just going to throw the rules out the window and go off the deep end like the other list. And I'm going to start off with this question. If you're going to have the Z4 and the Audi TT and the Camaro and the Mustang and all these cars that cost over $70,000, where is the C8 Corvette? I'm sorry, but it belongs on this list just like any of those other cars do. And if you're going to make used cars an option in your list, what about previous generations of Corvettes like the C5 and C6? You can get those things cheaper than a Miata now. And they're great performance cars. They're fast, they're nimble, and they're fun to drive. So if that's all you're really looking for, the Corvette definitely needs to be on this list. For my next car, I'm going to bump up the price point even more. And this car needs to be on the list because it's way more like a Miata than a lot of the other cars on that list. And the car I'm talking about is the new Lotus Emira. I don't know if you've seen this thing, but it's an absolutely beautiful car. It's extremely expensive. If there's any car out there that embodies the mantra of a Miata, it's this one here. It's small, it's nimble, it's really nice looking, and unlike the Miata, it comes in some really cool colors, which I wish they would do on the Miata. But yeah, it's way more than a Miata. You could probably buy 3 Miatas for the price of one of these, but you know what? If price is not an object and you need something that's a little more intense, this is a good choice. And as if the price point for that car weren't enough, I'm going to turn it up a notch and throw in the McLaren 720S. What can I say? If the Ariel Atom isn't extreme enough for you, maybe this is a good option. And if you want to loosely apply the Miata formula the same way they did, let's look at it. It's lightweight for what it is. It's about 3,000 pounds, but it also has 710 horsepower. It's nimble, it handles amazingly, the design is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's only $300,000. That's what, 8 to 10 Miatas? Who cares about how much it costs? You want to go hardcore here. And since we ended the previous list with the most crazy example possible, I'm going to throw out this next one. If you want to take a Miata alternative to the absolute extreme, it doesn't really get any more extreme than the Pagani Huayra. You'd be lucky to find one of these cars at $3.5 million. It'd probably be 4 or more. But this car is an absolute work of art. It's just stunning. And it clocks in at 2,900 pounds, so it's definitely got the lightweight part. And it has 768 horsepower and 734 foot-pounds of torque. This car is extremely rare and a bespoke design, which means every single one of them is different in some way. And if you've got the money to buy one of these, they will make it pretty much any way you want if you can get an allotment for it. You'd be pretty lucky to get one at that. I don't think I can top that. That's my list. That's all for my video. We'll see you next time.